Listen, y'all, the Baltimore Ravens, they have a new head coach. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I don't really know how to feel, but I gotta sit down. We gotta talk with y'all, and we gotta figure out how we feeling about the new Baltimore Ravens head coach, Jesse Minter. Should we be excited or Ravens fans? Oh, we in trouble. Let's talk. Y'all, listen. The Baltimore Ravens got a new head coach. It's Jesse Minter, who used to be, around these parts just a little bit, but it's kind of it's funny. It's funny. Welcome into the Be More Show, by the way. I'm your host DJ back again. But look, it's funny. Okay, it's funny to me because I was just about to go. I was gonna go live today. I was gonna make my glorious return. Okay, and I was gonna go live today, and I was gonna talk about how I really felt like after Steve Bisciotti's press conference, which I loved, I was really going to mention how I felt like Jesse Minter and Anthony Weaver seemed to be the front runners. Like I know we had, I can't remember who the other guy was, who was like the third finalist, but there was something that made me feel like Jesse Minter or Anthony Weaver was going to be the next head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. That's just how I was feeling. Right? That's how I was feeling. But I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest. To me, this is just my opinion, and it's ironic that the news dropped. Pretty much. I mean, I was literally like, ready to talk about that and how I felt like it was. How I felt like Bisciotti didn't really want a culture shift, right? Didn't really want, and when I say shift, I mean a culture shock, right? I don't think Steve Bisciotti wanted to shock the culture, right? I think the fear with shocking the culture is, what if you kind of send into the shell shock, for lack of a better term, right? The fear with shocking the culture would be the idea of a potential rebuild with Lamar Jackson in the building. And I don't think Steve Bisciotti wanted to do it. I really don't. Shout out to A6 Goes hanging out. Look, we hate this how he has to go. Listen, I'm going to get my thoughts here in a second. Appreciate you for coming by. Appreciate you for comate by as well. Appreciate, well, you same person, but appreciate you again for coming by. Hello, how are you doing? We got to talk about this. So I'm going to be honest. This is just my opinion. So taxes to me. I know it's tax time. Taxes to me. For me, I'm not mad, but I'm also not overjoyed. That's just me, right? That's just me. I'm not mad, but I'm not overjoyed either. I don't really know how I feel right now. I'm indifferent, I think is the best way to put it. I'm indifferent. Shout out to Brandon hanging out with us. Look, I'm indifferent, okay? I just am. I'm indifferent. There was a lot of excitement for me. This is just me. This is my opinion. There was a lot of excitement for a potential Brian Flores to come into the fold. And let me tell you why I was so excited, because I think I was going to mention this before we went live. And before the news dropped. The thing I loved about Brian Flores was he knew exactly how to defend Lamar Jackson. And, what is it? The enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So it's like, and maybe I got the concept wrong, but I just feel like having a guy who knows how to stop Lamar Jackson could make Lamar Jackson unstoppable. I was gonna mention that. And now, that's kind of out of the question, right? Because Brian Flores has kind of signed a contingency plan to keep him in Minnesota if he does not get a head coaching job. But I will say this. And let me see what AC was talking about. Well, real quick. Yes, I'm doing good. Hope you are. But look, but for real, I want to wait and see his coaching staff before I make a judgment. Me too. Right? Me too. So for me, when I got the news, I was just kind of like, oh, okay. Right. I wasn't like, this wasn't signing Odell Beckham Jr. where I was running around my house or nothing like that. This wasn't signing DeAndre Hopkins where I was just really excited. Right. This wasn't trading for Roquan Smith where I was like, okay. Right. This was kind of like, okay, let's see. Right. Let's see. Because the idea The idea is, I think Steve Bisciotti, from the press conference that he gave, wanted a defensive head coach with an offensive genius, and obviously the defensive head coach will keep the defense under control, no matter who you have as defensive coordinator. And I mean, you probably could really build your coaching tree from that, realistically, right? Because you got a guy who masters the defense as the head coach. So defensively, you're good, regardless of who the coordinator. I don't want to say regardless of who the coordinator is, but he's got more control over that. Offensively, then you have, offensively, you hire the right guy. The defensive coach doesn't really, it's not that he doesn't care about the offense, but it's like, I'm going to let that guy do what he does, right? I'm going to let that guy do what he does. Lovie Smith ain't worried about the offense too much, right? Right? Robert Saleh ain't worried about the offense too much. DeMeco Ryans ain't worried about the offense too much. Mike Vrabel is not worried about the offense too much. Now, they know enough X's and O's to put some input in, but realistically, they're letting their coordinators do their thing, right? They're letting their coordinators do their thing and they master a particular side of the ball. Now, we did get one thing we wanted. We wanted somebody who mastered a particular side of the ball. We did get that, right? We did get that. We should have made Flores head coach. Oh yeah, I've been hearing about him from the Rams, I think. OC, that was a power tandem. I mean, look, I was kind of excited for Flores, and I felt like Flores would be a culture shock, but not to the point of like a young guy who doesn't necessarily know the culture, I guess, right? Like, Flores knows the AFC North. Of course, knows Lamar Jackson very well. He kind of knows hard-nosed football, and I think that's kind of why I was kind of excited for him. Was the best defense candidate by far. I mean, I agree. Like the craziness of him not having a job is crazy. It's crazy work to me. That's just my opinion. Especially after the whole Dolphins scenario. Honestly, him not having a job, not being a head coach at this point, or at least getting a chance at it is just ridiculous to me. But anyway, so for me, my reason for optimism going into this, because and this is just my knee-jerk reaction, right? I like to give y'all the knee-jerk reaction, and then I like to come back later on and give y'all a little bit more the analytical. Y'all know that's kind of how I am, right? So for me, the reason why I'm not necessarily upset is because the defense realistically was the problem, right? Now I know offensive line, problem. Pass rush, of course, problem, if we want to talk about specific things. But let's be honest. An offense led by Lamar Jackson, and honestly, and I'm not saying don't sign any other guys EDC. I'm not saying that. But honestly, an offense led by Lamar Jackson is going to be completely fine, regardless of what's going on, right? Because he's that good. He's that darn good, right? He's that dynamic. So an offense led by Lamar Jackson, I'm not necessarily worried about that. Realistically, right? Number one, and I want to kind of talk to y'all in this way. Bisciotti did this, number one, because the Ravens are a defensive organization. I mean, we can be honest about that, right? We can be honest about that. The Ravens prioritize defense. Now, of course, there's been the defund the defense campaign. Shout out to LBHT for I feel like creating that and spearheading that. But I honestly don't think you can defund something without proper leadership, because you have to have proper leadership to be able to properly defund what you're trying to defund. If we're going to defund the defense, they still have to be complementary, like we've talked about before, right? We've all talked about it. Shout out to Brandon hanging out with us. Look, we've talked about it before, right? This defense it doesn't have to be elite. It doesn't have to be the Ravens defense of old, or even like the 2000s or anything like that. But it needs to be complementary. We need turnovers. I should start here. We need pass rush. We need turnovers. That's just what we need. And to me, this is my opinion. Because I saw what he did with Odafe Oweh, and I feel like the Chargers defense was pretty good, right? Pretty good, pretty disciplined. From what I've heard from a couple of, some of the players in that organization, he's got the makings of a head coach, right? From those guys. So I'm cool with that. And now, to me, the biggest hole in the Ravens team right now was defensively. Okay, the biggest hole is probably offensive line. But in terms of an entire unit, one of the biggest disappointments we saw last year, this defense and how they played. Under Zach Orr, 2 of the worst years of defensive football we've ever seen. Now, let me read this comment real quick, and I'll get into my next point. I'm optimistic to just need to see a great OCI. I agree with that. I agree. I think to see a great OC hire, I think would be big, right? I think would be big. To complement the head coach in the DC hire, we need a new culture of hiring the best coaches available and not being afraid of being replaced. Or also, because I think another thing that kind of gets in the way of our previous coordinators or the hiring of them is not wanting to lose them, right? Because when you lose coordinators, you have to kind of start over again. And unless you have like a true like offensive core or defensive core in place that can adjust with the next guy coming in, that becomes an issue too, right? So now, defensively, I don't think we have to worry about coordinators going here and there. I think offensively it's going to be very, very interesting because honestly, I think offensively, especially if you hire the right guy, I think offensively this could be a point where I don't see the offensive coordinator sticking around for a while. I mean, Todd Monken was getting calls after year 2. So it's not like I don't necessarily see the offensive coordinator staying around. But I think that's another part too. Like I think, not being afraid to hire coordinators knowing that they're probably going to ideally you want that coordinator to be a head coach, right? Not even necessarily replace you. Because I think, honestly, it's harder to get a coordinator to replace you than it would be for him to go somewhere else and be a head coach, right? If you have a great coordinator, he has disciples. Yeah, like McVay. Yeah, like McVay. You're right. I agree with that. And I think, honestly, I think Jesse Minter could create kind of a tree of his own, right? I think he could kind of create a tree of his own. Because I think, honestly, defensively, I think it's going to really fix a lot of issues because he got the best out of Odafe Oweh. And I mean, we talked about kind of the issues that we were seeing with him, and for him to go over there and kind of show out a little bit, he didn't have a historical season, but he played night and day different over there. So I think that was big too, right? I think that was big too. So I think to see him utilize a guy who kind of we kind of talked about before was kind of a project, kind of a prospect, like a guy who you kind of had to build into a really good pass rusher, and to show that he could create ways to make plays. I hate to tell you this, that sounds like Mike Macdonald to me, right? Because Mike Macdonald didn't have an elite pass rusher, but he was able to figure out a way to get pressure, right? He was able to figure out a way to get pressure. Through injuries, through all of this, he was still able to, through Kyle Bennett would come off the couch, he was able to figure out a way to get pressure. And that's, another thing that's going to be interesting to see, right? Is how this plays out. I'm honestly, like I said, I think optimistic is the best word to use, right? I feel like I always use Brandon's words, but I feel like optimistic is a good word to use because I think this immediately fixes a big defensive issue. And, depending on who you hire at offensive coordinator, which I've heard the Cliff Kingsbury, rumor being thrown out there. And I'm going to be honest. This is my opinion. Like I said, tax it to me. I'm not opposed to it. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury is a bad play caller. Now, like I said, I need to look into a little bit more film of him in Washington. I mainly remember him. I remember the buzz around him in college, right? And I remember, and with Kyler Murray and all that. But I also remember what he did in Arizona. I remember some disappointments, but I remember how electrifying that offense looked at times, right? So I think that's I would be curious to see where they go in that regard, because now you got a lot of the offensive minds I think we're thinking of, I don't think want to make lateral moves, right? I really don't. I don't think they're unless they feel like there's no way they're going to be a head coach until later. Now, this is my last point. It's my last point because I do want to do a little bit of a probably a longer video to kind of talk a little bit more in depth about things. So, how do I put this? So for me, the third kind of concept that I feel like this guy brings out in this team and kind of like maybe alleviates a little bit is the idea. So let's go back. Let's revisit. So we got the fact that Jesse Minter, he's a young guy, right? Create his own tree. We like that. We like the idea. We like the idea that you can create your own coaching tree. We like the idea that it's kind of a new start. You're not going to reinvent the wheel per se by having this guy. It's kind of low risk to a certain degree, a lot of people have said. But another thing that I've heard, right? Another thing that I've heard that I don't necessarily agree with. Shout out to Sip to Tally, because he was the one that kind of mentioned it, that somebody had said it, in his comment section. And I think it's valid. I think it's a valid argument. We, as Ravens fans, we are trying to get away from the stench of John Harbaugh, right? That's the whole thing, right? For lack of a better term, where we wanted fresh faces in new places. That's kind of why we didn't really want Anthony Weaver. That's kind of why we didn't really want Jesse Minter, right? That's kind of why we lean more into Brian Flores, right? Because we wanted something, something different. We didn't want the same 20 years to be copy and pasted and put right back in front of us, right? So, Minter is a Harbaugh hire, right? He's been around the Harbaughs. He's been, he's been, I mean, with every Harbaugh you can think of, right? Like, I mean, maybe, it might even, I don't know if his dad coached with, the father Harbaugh here, but still, like, the idea that Jesse Minter doesn't look like a head coach, right? The idea, and like I said, I don't subscribe to this notion. I don't subscribe to the notion that Jesse Minter doesn't look like a head coach, right? I just don't. I don't subscribe to that, because did John Harbaugh look like a head coach when he became a head coach? Probably not. Mike Tomlin, probably not, right? There was probably some skeptics. I mean, I know for a fact there was some skeptics on Sean McVay. There was some skeptics on Kyle Shanahan, right? Because there was pressure to talk about, especially when you got family in the business, right? So, Mike Tomlin, another one who came in young. Who knows what he's going to do? Same thing with Belichick. So all these guys, like, unless you've been a head coach before and you've had success previously, like if you're Andy Reid and you've had success previously and you go to a new team, obviously you look like a head coach. Lovie Smith looks like a head coach. He's older, right? Like, but at the same time, we didn't want these guys. So I think the idea that he doesn't look like a head coach, I think is whatever, right? I think it's whatever. In terms of, he's a younger guy, whatever it may be. But also the idea that we're trying to get rid of the Harbaugh, mystique, for lack of a better term, right? We're trying to get rid of the Harbaugh mystique, and we want somebody new, right? We want somebody new. We want somebody that's not connected to John Harbaugh. But we can't. This is just my opinion. Like I said, text it to me. This is just my opinion. We can't cape for Mike Macdonald to be our potential head coach. And, obviously a lot of us love Mike Macdonald to this day, right? We can't cape for a guy like Todd Monken, to potentially take over the reins. For some of us, felt like that could be possible, right? We can't cape for these guys and then turn around and say, well, but Jesse Minter, he was a Harbaugh guy. They all were Harbaugh guys. Right. I mean, Todd Monken I'm not saying they were best friends, but, he knew a guy who knew John's sister, who knew that person. Right. Like, there was that, he worked with Jim. Right. Same thing with Mike Macdonald. And another thing, to ease the pressure on you guys, because I understand we're all excited. We're all excited. We want to see what's next. But to ease the pressure on you guys, let's not forget Mike Macdonald did not look like a head coach in year one. It took some convincing, right? It took some convincing. And realistically, it took about a year to truly convince us. I mean, the back half of the season did help, but we need to see it again. And it took year two to truly convince us, okay, we can see this guy going somewhere, right? We can see this guy being the head coach for the Baltimore Ravens, right? He's that, he's that talented. He's that impressive. He's that much of a good defensive mind. And I think the same could be said about Jesse Minter. I'm not comparing him to Mike Macdonald, but I think at the same time, I think there could be some parallels. I think there could be some parallels, right? I think there could be some parallels because I think you got a young defensive mind who understands, and I'm speaking in confidence now, but understands the future of what defense is going to look like for the NFL, right? In the same way that those offensive minds understand, or you would hope would understand, the future of offense in the NFL. And I think this could be big. Now, I got a question for y'all. I'm gonna pose this question. I'm gonna get up out of here. Do we feel like the Baltimore Ravens, because I said this, and like I said, y'all have to tag all of these things I say to me, unfortunately. But no, I said this. I said, hey, before this hire was even made, I said the Ravens are in a better position. Maybe I shouldn't say the things I say. Something. Okay, look, I said, look, the Ravens are in a better position to win a Super Bowl now than they were with John Harbaugh. Now, that was pre-Jesse Minter hiring. My question is, and let me know down below what y'all think. Are the Ravens in a better position? I'm not saying to have a winning season. I'm not saying to make the playoffs. I'm saying to win a Super Bowl with Jesse Minter as their head coach as they would have been with John Harbaugh. Let me argue why I'm getting up out of here. I promise y'all. I promise y'all I'm getting up out of here. All right. I think I still stand by that. I don't think this is a copy and paste hire. But let's just hypothetically, let's play hypotheticals. Let's say it is. Let's say that literally Jesse Minter is John Harbaugh in a younger body with a defensive mind. Are the Ravens still in a better position to win a Super Bowl right now than they would have been with John Harbaugh? Or than they were with no coach at all? Right? I would say yes. Let me tell you why. All right. Let me tell you why. I would say yes. And this is not just me blindly standing by my word, right? I do need to look more into Jesse Minter. I'm excited about the move. I get more excited just, new faces, new places be like this, right? But let me tell you why. All right. Let me tell you why. So for me, I feel like we're in a better position because number one, let's talk. What was the Ravens had two really big problems last year. The defense as a whole, and the offensive line. More than anything, those were the two issues. What level of consistency has John Harbaugh brought to this team? Special teams. It's so, like I said, I'm copying and pasting before I even know how things will play out. Let's be honest. Special teams was pretty consistent under John Harbaugh. Has been, always has been. I think the last couple years it kind of tapered off a little bit. I do. Especially after Devin Duvernay was gone. I think after Devin Duvernay was gone, it was kind of like, I don't know about this whole special team stuff, right? Okay, cool. So let's just say that level of expertise, right? That level of consistency is now transitioned to the defense because you have a defensive head coach, right? Now, like I said, this is hypotheticals. So I'm just throwing it out here. If that level of consistency is now transferred to the defense, that means you get turnovers. That means you get pass rush, which the Ravens haven't had in a while since Matt Judon, right? That also means overall the defense is fixed. And in my opinion, the defense is a far bigger problem than the offense. Would I say the defense is a far bigger problem than the offensive line? No. But I will say the defense as a whole versus the offense as a whole is the defense is a far bigger problem. The defense is the one who can't hang on to leads. The defense is the one giving up touchdowns at the worst possible times. The defense is the one that in the playoffs can't get a stop when you need them the most. The defense is the one. Let me think if I got this right. I feel like I heard this right. The defense is the one that hasn't had under two coordinators now. The defense is the one that hasn't had a turnover in the playoffs, which is crazy. I don't even feel like that's a real thing. There's no way that that's real. That has to be hyperbole. In the same way that Zay Flowers went like 7 weeks of the season without scoring an offensive touchdown, like between offensive touchdowns. Complete hyperbole, even though it wasn't. But y'all see what I'm saying? So, in my opinion, at worst, if Jesse Minter, this is at worst, this is the worst case scenario. This is worst case scenario. I go to the gym once a week. I still, I still get a little bit of tone, right? Same thing. At worst, if Jesse Minter is John Harbaugh light, because I've seen that too. If Jesse Minter is John Harbaugh light with a defensive focus, this team still gets better. That's just my opinion. If Jesse Minter is just like John Harbaugh with a defensive focus and fixes the defense, especially if the Ravens hire the right offensive coordinator, right? Let's hypothetically say let's just put that into context too. If they hire a coordinator who possibly wouldn't become a head coach because we just don't know, right? We're talking about a young guy, right? We're talking about a guy who's maybe never called plays before. We're talking about a guy who may even be more of a passive offensive coordinator. I don't know who that is. But we have to remember, we have Lamar Jackson. We have playmakers on this team. Now, do I think that's really going to happen? No. Right? No. I think Jesse Minter is going to hire, because this is what Steve Bisciotti wants. Remember, Jesse Minter is going to hire a really good offensive coordinator, probably one that leaves within 2 years, right? Probably one that leaves within 2 years. He's going to hire a really good offensive coordinator, offensive coordinator. What's that guy? Let me look real quick. Let me go back up here to Brandon, my guy Brandon's his comment. He mentioned something. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah. What about I don't know how to say his name. Skahaz? I don't know how to say his name. Y'all know what I'm talking about. The guy from the Rams. Right? I know there's mentions of him, but isn't it possible that maybe that still happens? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just asking. So for me, I feel like, there's optimism to be said. I want to look more into Jesse Minter, though. I really do. I want to look more into Jesse Minter so I can really come with an informed and not so much an emotional response. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to come back later on in the week, and we're going to have a conversation. All right? But look, y'all, real quick. Let me see what my guy 86 was talking about once again. Brandon. Let's see. Oh. Shell House. Okay, let me go back. Let me go back and fix this. Okay, let me go back and fix this. Okay. Flores at head coach and Shell House at OC. Power tandem. See, but and I don't know. It's possible that Flores and Shell House have some sort of connection. I don't know. I don't know if they do. So I'll be interested to see if my guy right now kind of makes, his own tree a little bit. Now, albeit if, Shell House would technically probably be under McVay's tree. But still, that would be something. Tom was good, a good DC at the Vikings. So yeah, I remember there being buzz around Tomlin, but I also, and like I said, I could be wrong because it's been a minute since Tomlin was hired, but I also felt like there was a little bit of, he's young. I don't know if he can do it. I don't know, I don't know what we're, I don't know, what we're going to get out of him. And I mean, think about it. Tomlin was a young guy, a young DC coming from the Vikings. I'm not saying this guy's Mike Tomlin, but at the same time, it's like, you know, a defensive head coach is going to fix your defense issues, and then, you know, the offense, you know, if as long as you hire the right offensive coordinator, you know, it's going to be very interesting. And I honestly think if Lamar Jackson has a say, you know, had a say in the coaching decision, which I feel like he did, and if he has a say in who's his offensive coordinator, and we, you know, and he truly wants Kingsbury, I think Lamar Jackson will thrive under a coordinator that he really wants around. I mean, let's be honest. When John Harbaugh wasn't handcuffing Todd Monken, Lamar did exceptionally well, historically well under Todd Monken. So honestly, I wouldn't have been mad if Todd Monken stayed around. That's me though, right? I wouldn't have been mad if Todd Monken stayed around and with a defensive coach had the freedom to do what he does best. That's just me. I'm gonna stop. But if he acts like Harbs, no, because John refused to admit. Yeah, and I get that, but I also think you got to remember, John, especially, you know, when we get to later on in John's career, right, as he gets into his 60s, I've been around. I know a lot. Mentor has so much to prove right now. Very similar to Mike Tomlin, I feel like, when Mike Tomlin was hired, right? A lot to prove. Even Harbaugh, right? Harbaugh was accountable when he first. I feel like, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know down below if I am. But I feel like Harbaugh was a little more accountable in his younger age than he was as he got older. Because as he got older, his stuff didn't stink as much, right? Because I'm the Hall of Famer now, right? I'm the Super Bowl winning coach now. Jesse Minter has a lot to prove. A lot to prove. Even Cliff Kingsbury has a lot to prove. I know there's this idea that Cliff Kingsbury is lazy, but there's also this idea that Kyler Murray is lazy. You can't put two lazy people together and expect tenacity to come out of it. It's just not how it works. But wrong one. Is it possible to poach McDaniels before it's time? Honestly, I think that's a done deal. I think that's a done deal. Unfortunately, because I like McDaniels so much. I really do, man. Like I like McDaniels so much. I like McDaniels so much. Honestly, I think he was for what he got out of Tua. I think he's kind of done wrong in Miami. That's just me though. That's just me. Once he won a Super Bowl, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like once he won the Super Bowl, and I mean, I shouldn't say this. I shouldn't say these words out loud, man. Honestly, the Super Bowl run was one of luck. I shouldn't say this. I shouldn't say these words, bro. I shouldn't say these words, man. I shouldn't say these words because it was great. Don't get me wrong. It was great. But the Super Bowl run was, how in the world you trade for Anquan Boldin? You got Hey Diddle Diddle. You got the Mile High Miracle. And you got the overthrow heard around the world. And you got the power outage felt around the universe. Like, the amount of ridiculousness in that Super Bowl run, and you got Ray Lewis's last thing, right? Like, I mean, it was luck in the players. It was luck, and the players, the team, because once the roster broke up, yeah, right. Once there were no more great players around, and he had to show his true coaching prowess. He had to show his Sean McVay. He showed Sean Kingston. Like, he didn't show a football coach to be. But look, shout out to my guy Hendo. Make sure you check him out as well. They said the Kingsbury rumor may be a lot. It's interesting, like, and I get it. It's just rumor, innuendo, whatever. But it's also odd, and I'm not saying that they're truthful either, but it's odd that even the Ravens media people reported on this rumor, right? Like, that's the interesting part of it, right? The guys who in proximity could be the closest to Lamar Jackson even reported on it. So, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't be mad about Cliff Kingsbury, but that's, like I said, I like Cliff Kingsbury, but I'm also the weirdo that likes Chip Kelly. So, like, now, NFL success versus, don't get me wrong, like, I know, I like Chip Kelly. I'm not saying he was successful. I like Chip Kelly though. but anyway, not in the same way as Kingsbury. I think Kingsbury can truly be successful in the league. Like I said, I got to look at the Washington film. I'm curious about that. I'm curious to go back and look at that. I really am. But look, y'all. But I mean, shoot, Bieniemy couldn't even be successful in Washington, so it could be a Washington thing. But I digress. But anyway, y'all, look, I would definitely appreciate y'all for tuning in. If you haven't already, let me know what you think. Jesse Minter, the new Ravens head coach. What do you think? What do you think? I gotta know? I gotta know what y'all think, man. What do y'all think about Jesse Minter? Is it good? Is it bad? I'm gonna be honest, and I'm gonna wrap up. I'm feeling different. I'm not overjoyed, but I'm not upset either. I think there's some optimism to be said, though. I think there's some optimism to be said, y'all. But look, I gotta get up out of here. Definitely hope you guys enjoyed the show. As always, hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to what? 100? We trying to hit this. We trying to hit this honey burger. Okay, honey burger. That's what I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna call it that until we get there, and I'm gonna call it something else. Real quick, I reserve judgment. Exactly. I want to see who the staff is. That's what I'm excited about. Like new faces, new places, y'all. I'm excited about the staff. Because I think defensively, I think we'll be fine. I've always felt that way. We saw two of the worst years of defensive football I've ever seen in my life. But offensively, I think it's going to be interesting to see what he does, offensively, because he's probably not going to have nearly as much input on the offense as he will defensively. So it'll be interesting. But look, y'all, definitely hope you guys enjoyed the show. This has been the Be More Show. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Be sure to hit that for me. And we'll see you guys. See you guys on the next episode of the Be More Show. Until next time, my friends, appreciate y'all for coming by. Everybody who hung out with us, I appreciate y'all as always. Look, y'all, out of here.